Well, hello, everybody. I am here today with Mr. Bill Rollins, my friend from Bill. Where are you? You're somewhere up in New England, right?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Okay, yeah. Well, we couldn't be farther apart than in this country, north to south. Then, how about that? So, good. Well, okay. Hey, Oracle. Let me give some shout outs. Hey to Oracle. To Oracle says the great Bill Rollins is in the house. Yes, the man with the best
Wow.
Cooper book cover there is for sure. Hello to BBG in Cornwall. Hope to see you soon. Hello
Where's
to
Cornwall?
Cornwall's in England.
England. Okay.
England, yes.
I worked in Cornwall, Ontario years ago.
Okay. Yeah, there is a Cornwall, Ontario. Yeah, across the
Yeah.
border. Yeah. Yep. Hi, Landy. Okay, cool. Well, so basically, what we're going to do today, Bill, is you've got a notable suspect who you came across a while back, Joe Lakich.
Actually, I think they pronounce his name Lakich.
Lakich, like a latch key. Okay, Lakich.
Yeah, that's what his brother told me, that they pronounce their name Lakich.
Lakich. Good deal. Okay, so basically, I told Bill that what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let him riff, and he sent me some pictures and things that I've got some of them, and if it's pertinent to what he's talking about, I'll pull it up. But we'll go ahead and get started now. He said it was Lakich, right?
Lakich. Yep.
Lakich. Okay. Well, I've been saying Lakich the whole time. So
yeah. Well, that's why I asked his brother, because I wasn't sure how to pronounce it.
Lakich. All right. Cool. Well, all right, folks. Well, we're gonna get started. So, Bill, tell us about just how you started coming to Joe Lakich and all this other stuff.
Well, let me just say I grew up in Maine. Okay, and I was 16 years old when Cooper hijacked the aircraft. I was a junior in high school, working part-time at a grocery store. I think I had my driver's license maybe about 40 days. So, as you can imagine, I had a lot of other things on my mind besides DB Cooper. Okay, but my father always used to say, there's something about that man. He's different. He's not like your ordinary criminal. And that's, obviously he couldn't say much more. That just, he wasn't, he was described as being polite and, things like that. So I really didn't get involved in DB Cooper. I mean, I had an interest in DB Cooper. Now and then there would be a documentary on TV and I'd go watch it and see what they had to say. But I never thought, well, with the FBI on the case, how am I going to solve it? I mean, I don't have their resources and their manpower.
It sounds like you're the first person who's ever been into Cooper who thought they couldn't solve it starting out, because it seems like that's how people get into it, is they go, well, this doesn't seem like this seems very solvable, But.
Yeah, no, I just like, this is great. It's interesting. And I'm just going to, wait and see what happens. But of course, 10 years became 20 years, finally became 45 years when the FBI said, gee, we're just not going to pursue this anymore and we're closing the case. And because that was announced in the documentary, DB Cooper Case Closed.
Mm-hmm.
And after I saw that, I was like really upset. I'm like, I've been waiting 45 years to find out who this guy is. And now you guys are, you guys have abandoned the case. And I was just like, what was it that was so difficult? So I just went in out of curiosity sake to see what it was. And that made it so difficult. And I think one of the first things that I discovered that I didn't know was the jump. I think I always had the impression, well, Cooper made a daring jump from the back of a Boeing 727. Mm-hmm. Well, okay. But then you go read the particulars. Yeah, it's a Boeing 727. It's at night. Okay. It's cold and rainy down on the ground. And when this man jumps out, there's no visibility. He can't see lights on the ground. He doesn't know where he's getting out. I mean, it's just, this is craziness. So, I just tried to understand. And, I think I sent you one article that Ralph Himmelsbach's, said, this was a desperate act, something you would expect from somebody who had nothing to lose.
Right.
And I'm looking at this and I'm just going, probably Larry Carr's theory is right. This guy's just a dumb criminal. Doesn't understand how dangerous, this skyjacking is. Okay. And Matty McNally. I mean, I met him at CooperCon 2023, and I mean, what a nice guy. He'd come over. He's very personable. He's very jovial. He likes to laugh. You can't help but like the guy. He was a nice guy. But when he got up on stage and said, well, yeah, I went to the library and I read 2 or 3 books on skyjacking and said, yeah, I can do this. You talk about oversimplification. And I think he's lucky he lived.
Yeah, definitely lucky. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this and I'm going like, okay, this guy must be just another dumb criminal. Okay. But then I find the tie evidence, okay, from the citizen sleuths, where they found all these metallic particles and such, and their conclusions were, well, if he wore a tie and he was in a manufacturing facility, he was probably an engineer or a manager. Well, that sort of hit home because I'm an engineer, okay? And I immediately took a different perspective on this man. Let me just ask you a question. You're a lawyer. What if Tom's analysis, instead of finding metal particles, he had found some ink, and he said, "Oh, this ink is used by the legal industry." So this man was a lawyer. How would you view this guy if the evidence sort of pointed to him being a lawyer?
Well, I mean, I actually know a lawyer who committed a bank robbery. So actually,
okay.
It's possible, but it would be, you would think, I don't know, but I was going to say you would think lawyers were smarter than that, but I don't know. I don't know what I would think. What did you think about it?
Well, here's why I'm asking, okay? Because for you to become a lawyer, you have to get an undergraduate degree, correct? A 4-year degree in college. Then you have to go into law school. How many years is that?
3. It's a doctorate degree.
3 years in law school. And then you have to pass the bar exam, okay? And once you've done that, I mean, you're pretty much, you've got a pretty good lifestyle, a pretty good salary or, income. Why are you all of a sudden going to want to go hijack this airplane?
You're probably not.
Huh?
You're probably not.
And if something happened and you did this, and maybe you're like some of the other copycat hijackers after 5 or 6 years they get out of prison.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you go back to being a lawyer, or would you be disbarred?
I think you'd be disbarred.
So you understand what I'm saying? Your whole career now is in the balance. Okay.
Well, yeah.
So when I saw this, engineer, same type of thing, I said, well, he's not dumb. Okay. And he's not a criminal, because if he's a criminal, he's not going to get a job in a manufacturing facility, in management. Okay. I mean, a company's not going to hire a criminal type, for a job like this.
Not one who has a record, at least.
Yeah. I mean, let's go back to Matty McNally. As I said, I really like Matty. Okay.
Yep.
And towards the end of the conference, I had a chance to sit down and talk with him. And I said, Matty, it seems such a shame that you spent 37 years of your life in prison. I said, how do you think your life may have been different if you didn't hijack this airplane? And he said to me, well, if I wasn't going to do the hijacking, I was going to knock off a Brinks truck.
Yeah. He would have ended up in prison anyway, probably.
Yeah. If he didn't get shot and killed,
right.
Right. He was destined for prison. Okay. Yep. Because he just had a criminal mindset at that time. Okay. Where anybody, at least this is what I see, anybody working in this position in a manufacturing facility doesn't have a criminal mindset, because to get to that position, it's just like you being a lawyer. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of groundwork that has to be done to get to that position.
Sure.
And
Yeah, I see what you're
you're
saying.
going to forfeit it all. Okay. For this hijacking. All right.
Right. Okay.
So it wasn't making sense to me. Okay. Dumb criminal just didn't cut the mustard. All right. So, I mean, I just kept reading more articles, or if there was an old documentary on YouTube, I'd watch that, and I was just gathering information. And I got to the point, and you're probably aware of this, that I think it was 2003 that Joe Weber actually had a conversation with Tina Mucklow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
in
right.
Bruce
This
has
is
it
what
over on one of his articles,
Sure.
okay, at the Mountain News, okay? And after she talked with I talked with Tina, she came back to the drop zone, okay? And she wrote, I spoke with Tina about Cooper. She said, quote, he was a very sad man, unquote, okay? So I looked at this and I said, I wonder if something tragic happened to this man. Now, you'll find this in my book. And years ago, I had to make a decision about this phenomenon I call spiritual guidance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I could have ignored it. I could have said, well, there's no such thing. Okay. But it's got me to where I am today. So I made the conscious decision that I have to tell my story as honestly and accurately as I can. So when I read that and I said, I wonder if something tragic happened to this man, I was sitting right here at this computer. My head went down on my desk and I cried uncontrollably. Okay. It was like somebody had told me that my wife and son had just passed away and I was all alone in this world. And I don't know, you talked about Mary Todd Lincoln, I think, in a few episodes back, and how she was so grief stricken that she sort of lost her mind when her son, I think it was Willie, when her son
Yep.
Willie passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see me in the same situation. I don't know if I could deal with that type of grief. Okay. So as I was crying, I just thought, I don't have any reason to live anymore. I don't have a purpose. My wife and son are gone. What do I have to live for? So I wanted to be with them. So I started contemplating suicide. All right. So I thought, well, what do I do? Okay. Do I overdose on drugs? Do I take a bunch of sleeping pills and go out in a snowbank and fall asleep? I mean, you want to do something that's not painful, right? So as I'm thinking about this, my mind drifts off. I'm still crying, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, this man has a grudge. Okay. And I'm going, this wasn't something that was an accident. This could have been avoided. And so just logically, my mind was like, why throw your life away by jumping off a cliff when you can jump out of an airplane and get your revenge? And at that point, I started to slowly stop crying and lifted my head off my desk and, was very shaken. But it was like I understood.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but I've had instances like this before. And I devoted a chapter in my book to spiritual guidance. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So I continued reading more information, finding more FBI documents, whatever's available at that time. 2 days later, I'm sitting here and I'm reading something and I'm reflecting back on this incident that I had had. And I think to myself, did I really feel, an external influence? Or am I just getting myself all psyched up? No sooner thought that, my head was right back down and I was crying again. uncontrollably. And this time it was a little different because I understood. And after a minute or two, I lifted my head off my desk and I said out loud, "Yes, I feel your pain." And from that point on, I never looked back. I knew with 100% certainty that something tragic had happened to this man. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what the nature of the tragedy was. Just that was what happened. All right. So, being an engineer and an instrument-rated pilot, I said, well, I'm going to look at this and try and figure out what this guy did. Okay. And so, logically, okay, you can't drive your car to Portland International Airport and leave it there. Okay. Because when you come back to get it, okay, you're going to be photographed, you're going to be questioned, you're going to be scrutinized, you're an immediate suspect. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't do that. And you can't even take the car there and abandon it because sooner or later, the FBI is going to figure out that car was abandoned. Okay.
Mhm.
And they're going to go trace it back to wherever it came from. So one of the first things you have to do logically, okay, is find a very clever way to get the PDX so that the FBI can't trace you back. Okay. And I said, I don't think this man had an accomplice. Okay. Because number one, accomplices may talk later. Okay. That's a risk you run. But I think even more importantly, this is a very risky situation. The FBI may shoot first and ask questions later. Okay. You can't ask a friend or a relative to take on that type of risk. It's just not, acceptable. Whatever you want to say. You're asking somebody to put their life at risk for your grudge.
Okay.
So, and I just kept going through all these things. How are you going to escape? You may come down somewhere, okay, in the forest, but how do you get away? And I didn't know about Heineman. No, not Heineman. Rob Hetty. Okay, he left the car somewhere, and obviously
Right.
they found it and waited for him. Well, I sort of, looked at this logically. By the time you come down and walk to your car, okay, the FBI may have roadblocks set up 10 miles away from, the drop zone, just waiting for everybody to come drive through. I don't think they did, but, if you're a good planner, you have to anticipate that type of stuff. So anyway, it was just logic, and I kept going through everything, and then, the crazy money find down at Tina Bar. Okay, there were like 3 bundles of money, all within a very small area. They weren't spread all over the place. Tom Kay said there was no natural means for the money to get there, and it had to get there within a few months of the hijacking, to end up with the rubber bands still intact. Just all the constraints. So human intervention was required. And as I sat there and said, again, logic, how do you escape the drop zone? Because you can't, well, number one, how do you even get a car up there and leave it? I don't know. How did Hetty get his car to where he left it and then get back to the airport?
I actually don't know. I haven't talked to Rob. We're trying to get Rob to come to CooperCon this year. We'll find out. But
Yeah.
I guess he took a taxi, or I don't know. I guess he must have had a friend, I suppose.
Yeah, that could be. So anyway, I said, I just don't see how an automobile is going to, be good. And then I actually reflected back when I was in college on a case that happened in northern Maine 12 days prior to Cooper's hijacking. Okay. Now, I didn't learn about the case until 73, after this man had been caught, imprisoned, and he told the story from prison. But he basically robbed a bank in small town Maine, like 4,000 people in Mars Hill, Maine. Okay. And he was a Vietnam vet, probably had PTSD because he'd done 3 tours of duty in Vietnam, totally disillusioned with, life as a civilian and decided to rob the bank. And he was he was kind of crazy, because it was a funny story. He went in with his disguise, but the teller recognized him even though he had on a disguise. At first, she thought he was joking, and it took him a while to finally convince her that no, I'm robbing the bank. And then she was elderly and kind of slow, putting money in the bag. So he puts the gun down and jumps over the counter and grabs a bag of his own and helps her. Yeah, it's just funny. But the clever part is he didn't have a getaway car. He took the money behind the bank up to a stream called the Presque Isle Stream, where he had an inflatable raft waiting with provisions and a small pup tent. And he initially escaped by paddling that downstream. Okay, and basically camped out in the woods for about 10 days, and nobody knew what happened to him until obviously he was captured and he told the story. Yeah, there he is right there, Bernard Patterson.
Yeah.
So I said, well, that's what makes sense. Cooper had this plan that he knew where he was coming down, and he had a boat waiting for him because it's easy to put a boat there. It's hard to take a car up and leave it, but you can put a boat on a trailer and take it up, to the Merwin Dam vicinity and put your boat in the water and just have it tied up and waiting for you.
So in what river are you saying he went down? The Lewis River?
Lewis River, yeah. He went down the Lewis River and then up the Columbia back to Tina Bar, which was his base of operations.
Okay. So that was your theory, is he had a boat.
Yeah, we had two boats. One boat got him from Tina Bar up to PDX, and then one boat got him from Merwin Dam back to Tina Bar.
Okay, so but how did that lead you to Lakich?
Okay, so after seeing all this, because it answers pretty much all the questions, how come there's nothing in the drop zone? Well, Cooper's gone. How come there's no missing persons report? Well, he got away. Okay, and how did he get to PDX without being, traced back? Well, he came via the Columbia River and left a boat right by the edge of the river because, the airport is right by the river.
Yep.
And then he just walked to the airport. Okay. So I just saw all this and I was compelled to write a book about it. I mean, I had no ambitions to be an author. I just said, I've got to write this story. I've got to, tell everybody what I've discovered. Okay. So that's my book. In my book, I don't mention Joe Lakich or anybody else. Okay, because I don't know who he is.
And can we talk about that? And can we talk about that book cover? I mean, what is that?
Sure. Well, I guess I looked at it as, everybody's like, what happened to Cooper? So I decided to have my book cover be D.B. Cooper parachuting into Oz.
Why Oz?
Well, it just, it's because nobody else knows where he went. So, it just parachute into Oz and nobody can find you.
Well, and isn't Portland called the Emerald City or something?
I think it's Seattle. When I did my podcast with Darren Schaefer, several years ago, he said to me, "Did you know that Seattle was the Emerald City?" And I said, "No." I just never entered my mind. I just thought, okay, I want to show him parachuting into Oz because that's,
It's Seattle. So yeah, you're right. Darren's right. It's Seattle. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. Well, yeah. So, okay. Definitely the best book cover that I know of for Cooper. It's definitely a head turner. So what, okay. So your book is not about Lakich. So it's about the escape.
No. Yep. My book is just D.B. Cooper, how he escapes. I could see his plan. I saw how he was able to do what he did and leave almost no evidence behind. That was what I say was he meticulously planned this hijacking so that he could do that.
Okay. And so now everybody here wants to talk about Joe Lakich. So how did you get to Joe?
Right. Okay. So after I finished my book, I said, I got to go find this man. Okay. And all I knew was he had an intense grudge, and something very traumatic, had happened to him. Something. I'm not coming up with the right word here.
A catalyst?
Tragic.
A tragic catalyst.
Yeah, something very tragic had happened to this man, and he had a grudge. So I started out in 1970 in April. There was the Kent State Massacre. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Of course, sure.
You
10
are.
soldiers and Nixon's coming. Sure.
Yeah, some younger people aren't. Okay, so there were 4 students killed in that Kent State Massacre. So I went and looked at their fathers. Okay, and all the people I looked at, I was looking for 3 things. First, we got to have a man who has some kind of either aviation or military experience, because Cooper knew how to put on a parachute. He knew how to configure the 727 for safely jumping out of it. And he even knew that at one point, Tina told him, well, we'll take off in a short while, but we've got to wait for the flight plan. And he says, never mind that. They can do that once they're up in the air. Let's get the show on the road. So he knew in the aviation world, sometimes called a pop-up IFR. IFR stands for Instrument Flight Rules. Mm-hmm. So he knew that they could take off under visual flight rules, and then once they're up in the air, they could file a flight plan for their instrument flight.
Okay? Seems like that has always seemed like a big clue to me, for sure.
Right. So, because whoever this person is has to sort of fit the physical description and maybe look like the sketch. And then I am not a person who believes the tie evidence. This was a tie that got bought at a 5 and dime. Okay. I'm of the opinion that this was Cooper's tie. So The other thing I was looking for was somebody who wore a tie into a manufacturing facility. So nobody at the Kent State Massacre fit the bill. So then the next thing I started looking at, there were 2 major airline crashes in 1971. One was an Alaska Airlines flight. It was coming into Juneau, Alaska, but it's very mountainous outside Juneau. And some of the nav aids weren't working properly, navigation aids. And the plane crashed in the mountains. Everybody was killed. Okay. I think the FAA actually paid some damages to the families of the victims. Okay. In that case. Another one was a Hughes air flight. I think it might have been a DC-8, and it got collided with an F-4 Phantom jet that was out hot dogging around. And there was only one survivor in that incident, and that was the co-pilot of the Phantom. He was able to eject. Everybody else died. So I got the passenger list, and I started searching. And this time I'm looking for, fathers, brothers, husbands, because the age of the victims, they aren't just young kids now. They're, all over. So I was going through those, and I just happened to find this 5/8 November incident, which I'd say most people here probably are familiar with. An incident happened 51 days prior to D.B. Cooper's hijacking. October 4th, 1971, a man hijacks a plane. He actually reserves it as a charter aircraft, and the pilot and co-pilot show up, and he shows up with an associate, we'll call it. Bobby Wayne Wallace was his name, and with Susan Lakich. And when she realizes, that he's taken her away, she's screaming and telling the pilots and co-pilots, he's kidnapping me and all this. And there's an exchange, but, finally he pulls a gun and tells them, we're going. And so he hijacks the plane. They were originally supposed to go to Atlanta. He changed it to the Bahamas.
From Jacksonville.
Huh?
From Jacksonville.
No, he said, I want to go to the Bahamas.
Right.
And the pilot said, well, we got to put down in Jacksonville to refuel.
Okay, that's right.
Okay. So he agreed to that, and they got down in Jacksonville because the FBI was waiting. and told him, sorry, we can't refuel the airplane. Your only option is to come out with your hands up. That's the hijacker. And that was George Giff. And that was Joe Lakich's son-in-law. Yep, there's George and his wife, Susan, who is Joe's daughter, was Joe's daughter. So the FBI, when they don't get any cooperation from George, the hijacker, they shoot out the two main tires, and there was one engine that was still idling, so that the aircraft could taxi in. They pumped bullets into that one till it died. And at that point, the hijacker, again, George Giff, realized he was trapped. So he shoots and kills the pilot, shoots and kills Susan, and shoots and kills himself. Now, do you have the one there, Joe's media response?
I don't think so. I'm sorry.
Hang on. If I tell you the slide number, would that help?
Sure.
Well, I got so many of you.
Yeah, but you had a bunch. Let's see. I'm looking. Okay, I got it right. Yeah. It says, I think the FBI made a gross error. Is that what you're getting at?
Right. He says, I think the FBI made a gross error. And he says, I know George didn't mean to harm her, but when the FBI had him trapped, he decided to just end it all and take everyone with him. So Joe did not blame
George.
George. George had emotional problems. Okay. I'm not going to go into all the details, but the guy had emotional problems. Smart guy. He had a bachelor's and master's degree in biology, and he taught biology at Peabody College, and Susan was one of his students. So he wasn't dumb, but he just had, problems. And when he realized that his marriage was ending and Susan was going to leave him, that's when he kidnapped her and hijacked the plane. But Joe did not believe, and that's one of the things that really got to me, is he was vocal in the media about how the FBI made a gross error. Okay, now a man that I talked with named Tom Pugh was one of the pallbearers at Susan's funeral. I don't think I have a picture or anything of him. Okay, but Tom said that he went over to the Lakich house that night after Susan, was killed, and Joe said the FBI has blood on its hands. So, some pretty serious condemnation of the FBI. All right. So I began to focus on Joe. All right. And no matter what I found, Ryan, I couldn't eliminate him. Okay. I said, well, do you have military experience? Oh, yeah. And he went by retired Major Joe Lakich. He didn't call himself Mr. Lakich. He was retired Major Joe Lakich. Okay. He fits the physical description perfectly. It took me quite a while to, find out all that data, but he did. And there was one woman, I think I had a picture of Susan in a ski boat.
Yeah, I think I've actually got that. Sure. Okay,
so there's his daughter, Susan. And when she was in college, she did modeling for the local newspaper, the Nashville Tennessean. Okay. But Joe had a boat very similar to the one you're looking at here, a ski boat with an outboard motor.
Okay.
Susan, when she was in high school, used to invite some of her friends to come over, and Joe would take the girls out water skiing. And his house was right on the Cumberland River in Nashville.
Yeah.
So I talked with one of Susan's friends, and she told me Joe had a dark complexion. And she said, when we'd go out water skiing and after he'd been in the sun for a while, it really became noticeable. So everything in that physical description, his brother told me he was 5'11" and always in great shape. His sister told me he had dark hair and dark eyes, just like all the siblings in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I
Well,
just
he's definitely dark complected. I mean, you can tell in that photograph for sure.
yeah
He's got a dark complexion, brown eyes, for sure.
yeah.
Okay, and so, but all right. So, but now what? I mean, what else did you find out about him? I mean, what were his connections to the tie particles?
Okay, so I talked with his son, and he told me back in the day, 1971, he was a production supervisor at Nashville Electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and essentially he had a number of women that worked for him, and the women basically assembled the product, which are very little small cylinders, the electrolytic capacitors. Excuse me. So women had smaller fingers, so they were more nimble at, assembling these small little devices. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe was responsible for making sure that they met the quotas. So uh, that made a lot of sense to me because engineers, I know Tom Kay and Eric Eulis think, well, these are engineers that have got all these particles in their ties. But as a career engineer, I can tell you that engineers are pretty much office workers. Okay. Yeah. We go down to the shop floor when needed. Okay. Or we may be called out to the field to a customer site. But if we go out to a customer site, we're not wearing ties. Okay. We're wearing overalls or we're wearing a work shirt or something like that. We're not wearing ties. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if, like when I worked at the factory in GE, it was unionized. And if I went down to the shop floor and I grabbed some wrenches and started saying, "Gee, I got to take out this pressure transducer. It's not working right." Well, the guys are all going to file a grievance and walk off the job. The union does that work, not the engineers. Okay. Now you can find places where it's non-union. Okay, but again, engineers typically have technicians or other people to do the work for them, and they're more working with, like I say, in the office. They're working with customers, they're talking with vendors. Uh, I had a job where I did calculations a lot. So, a steam turbine, uh, customer come in and say, we want a steam turbine, we want this much power and at this speed and blah, 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 blah. And, I'd have to go say, well, is it going to be 6 stages? Is it going to be 7 stages, et cetera? We have to design a turbine to meet their needs. So I was just running performance calculations for the bulk of my, days when I was in that job. So when you see somebody who's got all these particles in their tie, okay, it means that they're more intimate with the machinery. Do you have the Dennis Lisney?
No, but Dennis Lisney said he was a working man, had the
Right,
hands of a laborer or
right.
something
He
like that.
was
Yeah,
impression was he was a working man in
it's a
lieu
blue
of an
collar.
office person.
Yeah, it's a blue collar.
Yep. So uh, that said, wow. So I started looking into the patents of the day for electrolytic capacitors because that's what they made at Nashville Electronics. And I found patents where they called for titanium, bismuth, gold, silver, palladium.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't in big quantities. They were plated, gold plated or palladium plated, this type of stuff. But the the materials were used. They were there.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't eliminate Joe based on his workplace. In fact, that's a very unique workplace. Okay. I mean, at GE, we worked with steel and stainless steel and, Inconel, a small amount of aluminum in what we did. Uh, if you got into um, the gas turbines, there was more titanium, but it was a titanium mix, alloy. But gold, silver, palladium, that stuff's expensive. You don't use that in big machinery. It's too expensive to use, 2 pounds of gold over here in this, section of the turbine.
Okay. So, all right. So okay, you've got the tie particles now. I guess guess the main thing, the main issue, or one of the issues that I have. Well, let me before I go back to issues. When you came across Lakich, like, what? I mean, you spoke to the family. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, what would the? Did you have any ethical issues about naming a deceased man or whatever, or was he dead when you came up with it? I mean, he died not that long ago.
Yeah,
Was
he
he still
died
alive?
February 4th of 2017.
Okay.
And I actually talked with his son about maybe 3 weeks prior.
Oh, okay. Wow. All
So,
right.
so he was still alive, but he was in a care facility and had dementia. And, I think he was, end of life type thing.
And what kind of response did the family give you to this accusation?
Well, his sister said, you got a big imagination. and, okay. The brother, when I told him, he was floored. And he said, I hope he was. But then after that, he didn't want to talk to me. He just, whatever reason, he didn't want to talk to me. Okay. His son was very upset because 3 weeks after I talked to him, Joe passed away.
Right.
So I didn't talk with him for a while. But then a few years later, we reconnected and I had more evidence. I had the picture of him. And the early years, I didn't have any good pictures of Joe. I had a picture of him from, 1951 or something when he was a instructor of military science at Gettysburg College. All right, but it was a black and white, low resolution, so it wasn't anything good. But then I got some better photos, and when I lined up his face with the FBI sketch, his son started. He realized. He said, "You're right." Right.
Okay, so Joe's son likes the theory.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now what about Susan Jr.? Now I guess I'll call her Susan Jr. because
Right.
basically when his daughter Susan was murdered, she had a toddler essentially.
She was less than 2 years
maybe.
old.
Yeah. Yeah.
20 months old or something like
And
that.
And Joe became her new father, adopted her.
Well,
Correct?
they had to.
Yeah, they had to. And her name is also Susan.
Right.
I'm guessing they renamed her that probably from whatever she was originally named. I'm guessing.
When she was young, they called her Susu.
Okay.
Okay. And, that you can see some of those names. I mean, she was in the paper sometime after Susan was killed, and, they showed Joe's wife with Susu. Okay. So that's what they called her. But she has never spoken with me.
Okay. Have you tried, I guess?
Huh?
Have you tried, I assume?
Yeah, I tried a couple times and she didn't respond. I think the second time her husband called me back.
Okay.
And he told me, says, she doesn't want to talk about it. She had a terrible childhood. Okay. And there aren't a lot of good memories. And she just, doesn't want to, approach the subject.
So, all right. So I guess I'll get into some things about about Lake. I mean, why the Pacific Northwest if it's Lakich? Lakich.
Okay. As I looked at this hijacking, you have to read some of the words. Okay. So obviously he told Tina he had a grudge to settle. Okay. And she says, "Oh, do you have a grudge against Northwest Airlines?" And he laughs. And he says, "I don't have a grudge against your airlines. I just have a grudge." And then he follows it up with, "Your flight suited my time, place, and plans." Okay. So you can understand time because he wants to be escaping under the cover of darkness. All right. So he's got this time. He's not taking an 8 a.m. flight. He's taking one at, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All right. And his plans obviously are to get the money and get away. We don't really know much more than that. Okay. But place. What is so significant about this place? Okay. Why Portland and Merwin Dam and all this? And I'm, scratching my head. What is it about this place? And as I looked at the maps and saw everything, it's because the point of beginning, PDX, and the drop zone, Merwin Dam, are interconnected by navigable waterways. Okay. So this is his way to be elusive, use waterways. Okay. So that's when it all clicked. I mean, at first I wasn't sure if Lewis River was navigable, but as I kept searching, I found, yeah, you can take boats, most of the way, I think from the Columbia River almost all the way to, you can't get to Merwin Dam totally because it's roped off, but, you can get up close. And when I was there in 2019, I went to CooperCon 2019, which was at Kiggins, okay? I drove up there, okay? And walked around by the dam. You can't walk on the dam, and that's, company private property, but I went to the recreation area. And then further down there's a boat landing. Yeah, it's a steep hill. Yeah, probably this picture was taken from somewhere down there. And you walk down this steep hill, and it's paved, and there's a boat landing. And a guy had launched his boat, and he was in there fishing. And if you looked in the water, there were a bunch of dead salmon, in the shallow, when I say shallow, 2 or 3 feet deep along the edge of the waterway. Well, another boat came right up to this guy who was fishing, and I think he was fishing out of season. In other words, this was spawning season, and you're not probably supposed to be fishing at that time. Okay.
Right.
So I don't know where that boat came from, but it came from downriver somewhere. So, yeah, that was what I saw was, place. What was the reason for this place was the navigable waterways connecting the airport to the drop zone.
Okay. Now, I look at Joe, look at his picture here, and, Joe was infantry. All right. So I don't see any jump wings on his uniform here. And he's not Army Air Corps. He is infantry. I see he's got a combat infantry badge, which he got in World War II. But so now if he's not, I mean, what possible ties does he have to aviation?
I'm only going to tell you speculation because I don't have a solid answer. Okay. But he was when he was first in the last 10 years, he was in planning and logistics. They called it a G4. And the term was supply officer. So he was responsible for, okay, we need ammunition, we need food, we need medical supplies. It was up to him to make sure that his unit had all the supplies they needed. Later, he went on to be an S4, which in other words, after 51 or somewhere in the 50-51 time frame, he left Gettysburg College. He was an instructor of military science in their ROTC program. And he went to Fort Benning in Georgia, okay, in their officer candidate school. And he came out as an officer, okay. Now, some people have said that there is some basic jump training that you do in officers candidate school. I don't know if that's true or not, okay. But the other thing that I can't find an answer to is he was in the military in 1939. He joined the National Guard in Chicago, where he lived.
Yeah, right.
He was in there for 2 years, went through 2 summers, okay, in their program. And in March of 1941, his unit was called up for active duty. And he did basic training in Tennessee, and then from there went to California. Now, I did read something that some of the soldiers who went to, I think it was Fort Ord, California, went up to Longview, Washington, where they had artillery training. I don't know if Joe was one of those or not. You know, it isn't delineated in his his military records. After he served up in the Aleutian Islands during the first part of World War II, but by 1943, I don't know if you know this, the Japanese had taken over 2 islands of the Aleutian Islands at the end of the chain. Okay, so they were driven out in 1943, and it looks like he came back to Seattle area. Where, I don't know. It didn't say, you know, what fort, like it was Fort Lewis or where. He came back to Seattle. He was there for a period of time. Then he was sent to Texas, and then finally back to Fort Campbell in Kentucky, which is, I don't know, 90-minute drive north of Nashville. And that's where his wife was from, and that's where they settled. Okay.
Okay.
So that was his military. But in 1946, March of 1946, after the war was over, he re-enlisted. But his military record shows nothing from 1946 until 1951 when he goes into Officers Candidate School.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wrote to the, you know, military records and said, gee, there's a gap here. Can you fill it in? And because I'm not a family member, and they said, this is all you're getting.
You wouldn't get much anyway. He's Army, so the fire burned down most of the records from World War II.
Okay.
In 73, the St. Louis fire burned all their records. So
yeah.
So there's not much there. I mean, they probably wouldn't be able to give you much anyway. But
okay, I do know that he was part of an occupation force in Italy,
mm-hmm.
because he has a medal for it. You know, that's noted. So he was in Italy in that time period, and he picked up Italian because his son told me he spoke fluent Italian. He also spoke fluent Serbian. Okay,
right.
And his brother told me that when he was 18 years old, he spoke English and fluent Serbian, and the elders in the church wanted him to join the clergy. But for whatever reason, Joe declined. But
okay.
I think Serbian was probably the language spoke at home because his parents were of Croatian descent, and I think they immigrated to the U.S. around 1918. I don't know the real year. Joe was born in 1921.
Okay, so I guess my issue has always been that why. Okay, so we know that Joe. So for those who don't know, like he sued the FBI, and
well,
it's
not just him.
Well, the pilot's family as well. Yes, there was a lawsuit against the FBI, and they won. And it was the first, I believe, it was the first wrongful death lawsuit that was ever successful against the FBI. As far as I know, a federal court ruled against the FBI, which is just rare. But so now, I guess the issue is how is it, if his grudge is against the FBI, how is extorting $200,000 from a airline via an insurance company via a bank, settling a grudge with the FBI?
Okay. Let me just clarify something on the lawsuit. The aircraft owner was also party to that lawsuit.
Yep.
Okay. And I sort of look at a lawsuit like a lottery ticket. You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you don't.
Yep.
Right. So the initial lawsuit was not successful. Okay.
Yeah, they appealed it. Yeah, sure.
They had to do an appeal. Right. So you've probably read the legal stuff. I mean, I don't understand all the legal jargon in there, you know.
Sure.
Habeas corpus Christi or, you know, that type of stuff. You know?
Well, but they won on appeal, which is all that matters, I guess.
Yeah, they won on appeal. But, you know, look at what the FBI did to these people. I mean, okay, you know, they screwed up and Susan dies. Mm-hmm. Right? That's not good, okay? Because for Joe, I believe she was the love of his life. Okay? So they took away the most valuable thing in his life. Mm-hmm. All right? So I'm sure he was, and people told me he was emotionally devastated. At a funeral,
sure, of course.
Somebody told me he was white as a ghost. Okay?
Sure.
So there's the first the first part, obviously, his daughter's now dead. But on top of that, when they filed the lawsuit, the FBI put out the argument, hey, we're the government. You can't sue us. Okay. Now, the judge threw that out. Then the Lakich family, they said, well, wait a minute. You've adopted Susu, the toddler. Okay. And they said, under the laws of adoption, when you adopt somebody, you assume responsibility for all of their care. So you can't come back on us. And the judge threw out that argument. But that's where they were. And when the lawsuit finally went forward, okay, and a couple people have verified this, they were followed wherever they went, and they got harassing, intimidating phone calls in the middle of the night.
Yep, I wouldn't doubt that.
So the FBI are not nice people in this incident.
Sure.
And I don't know what pushed Joe over the edge. Okay. I mean, I say in one of my YouTube videos, he probably said, the FBI's got too much time on their hands. Maybe they need a real case to work on.
Well,
okay. So
okay.
Being a military planner, which what he was in the latter part of his, military career, he just designed a covert military operation that the FBI could never solve. Okay.
Mm.
And you talk about, revenge. Okay. How much more, what do I want to say here? How much more of a punch does that have than just winning $56,000? Okay. Which might represent what, half an hour of the FBI's annual budget? They're not going to feel the pain from this lawsuit. But the DB Cooper case, that's right out in front of the whole world. Okay. And the FBI this has been nothing but frustration and embarrassment for the FBI.
Okay.
All right.
So
this was.
So you think it was an extortion to embarrass the FBI?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now you got my book cover right there.
Sure.
You had it, the one with the back cover as well.
Yeah, let me get it. Hang on. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Now remember, I wrote this book before I ever knew who Joe Lakich was.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew who DB Cooper was. I could see what he did. But you read that last two lines down at the bottom. With a full understanding of Cooper's situation, we may come to a different conclusion with regards to who is the true criminal in this case. How damning can that be? Think of it, when everybody realizes that Joe Lakich was DB Cooper, okay? When they look back in history and they're going to say, who is the criminal? The answer is going to be, it was the FBI itself. I mean, how damning is that?
Okay, well, I guess that's where I suppose, we differ, I guess, is that I feel like if he had a young daughter, I mean, he lost his daughter and then has to raise his baby. I mean, he had Susu to live for. Now he's not. Why would he go do this? I don't know. I just kind of my thing.
I don't profess to have all those answers.
Sure. It's difficult questions.
Yeah.
I guess my thing with Joe is always like, why, if you lost a daughter in a hijacking, would you want to go harass other men's daughters and put them in danger during a hijacking? I don't. If you're a grieving father, why would you do that? I guess your thing would be that he's not thinking correctly. I suppose maybe.
Well, some of that, you call it temporary insanity, maybe. But
sure.
Let me tell you about Ralph Himmelsbach.
Okay.
Several years ago, and it was going around in the Cooper world, that Ralph Himmelsbach's health was failing.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that he had left the ranch that he'd lived on for years, and his stepdaughter and husband had a house nearby, and they had a manufactured home brought in and put on their property so that Ralph and his wife could have their own living space. But if they needed help, a minute away, his stepdaughter and her husband were right there. Okay. So I ended up finding her, and I talked with her, and I said, "Can I talk to Ralph Himmelsbach?" And she says, "Oh, yeah." She says, "As much as his health is going bad, his mind is sharp as a tack." And I said, "Okay, good." So she connected me with Ralph. Okay. And I told Ralph, I said, "Ralph, I have found the man who hijacked your airplane." And I said, "But he wasn't a thief or a criminal. He was a man with a grudge." Okay. And I said, he did this hijacking because he had, a grudge against the FBI. But I said, he was actually a very nice man. And I said, since I'm the one who understands him and who he is, I said, I'm now going to talk to you as though I am Joe Lakich. And so then I spoke to him and said, "Mr. Himmelsbach, I have to apologize to you, for all the frustration and anguish that you have had over the years, trying to solve this case. And I did not have a grievance against you as a person, but a grievance against the FBI as an organization. And I'm sorry, for the pain I caused you." Okay. Ralph listened. I don't know if, what he thought. Maybe thought I was a little touched. But anyway, he listened. And I'm going to have to do the same for all the members of the flight crew, because I understand Joe Lakich. And I know that he, that the flight crew was basically, they were collateral damage. Okay.
Okay.
And, I'm sure if he could have, he would have apologized, but obviously he can't reveal who he is anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing, just a little criticism of Joe is that I mean, women, and I don't know if how many women are in our chat. I know Mary's in our chat. Maybe I think Oracle's a female. But like, I mean, Cooper is basically described as he's ugly. Okay. He's homely. They sort of use the word homely. They're constantly saying he's unattractive. I mean, Joe Lakich doesn't look unattractive. I mean, women, is Joe Lakich an ugly guy? I don't see that. I think he's rather kind of a noble looking guy. I mean, I think he's got some other features that fit. His nose is kind of small, but
yeah, I can't comment as to, whether he's good looking or not good looking or whatever. I'm sure 51 days after his daughter's death, he probably had taken off quite a bit of weight and had the turkey gobble, just like Bill Mitchell described.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably put weight back on since then in this picture, because that's about 10, 12 years after the hijacking. But, I agree that I'm not sure he's quote unquote homely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. A couple women. Mary has a good point here. Mary John says, "Do people acting desperately under temporary insanity really successfully pull off intricately planned heists?" I would say not. But I mean, but I guess maybe his military background. I don't know. I guess my biggest knocks on him really are just aviation, right? I mean, it's just always it's a problem with people like Verdal or somebody like that. I mean, aviation. All of our copycats, all of them are aviation centric. I mean, every single last one of them. They've spent hundreds of hours in planes and things, and they're all aviation people. And Lakich is infantry, so that's a knock on him. I would say also, I'm not sure his lip looks really unique. His lips look pretty normal to me. There's that criticism. I mean, but he's got some broad cheekbones. But I mean, you like his hoodlum resemblance, I suppose. We call it the hoodlum sketch there.
Is that what that one's called? The hoodlum sketch?
That's what I've started calling it, and I guess the Vortex has adopted it because call it the hoodlum sketch because when Flo Schaffner first saw it, she said that looks too much like a hoodlum. She goes, Cooper was more refined than that.
Ah, okay.
And so they, that was when they. Yeah, I agree. Melanie here says, I mean, he's definitely not ugly, but none of the sketches depict an ugly man either. Yeah, the sketches, it's almost like, to me, like the sketches are like AI. Like AI is always going to make you look better than you are. For some reason, the sketches, you're right. The sketches don't look like an ugly person. Well, the hoodlum does, I guess. Blue Strike is saying that the Bing sketches are kind of ugly looking. Yeah, maybe.
Bing sketches are just so basic.
Bland. They're very basic, yeah.
There's so many people who can sort of fit that. I mean, the FBI was getting all kinds of people saying, "Oh yeah, my next door neighbor looked just like him, and he bought a car and a boat last year, or whatever."
Yeah, our sketches are 4 different people. I mean, that's at least 4 different people there. Yeah. I mean, our last 2 look similar, and the Bings are similar, but Rico Suave, as I call him, I don't know what this guy on the top is with his little.
Right.
I think Edwards calls it the Cliff Robertson sketch or something. But
okay, yeah,
I never forgot. I've never learned what to call that sketch, but I mean, its name is the initial sketch, but I'm not sure what to call that one. But he looks goofy. Yeah, that's a good point. The Dracula sketch for the win is what Mary says. The Dracula sketch, of course, is our. Where's our Dracula? Do I have the Dracula sketch?
Is that the one that Flo did for Unsolved Mysteries?
Yeah. The Dracula sketch, we call it. We try to find that for any new viewers.
It's sort of a widow's peak like you, right?
Yeah, exactly. and he's well, he looks just like the sketch from the movie The Usual Suspects, Kevin Spacey. There he is. I mean,
yeah.
Looks just like the facts at the end of the movie. That's Kaiser Soze in the movie Usual Suspects. But yeah, I don't know where that widow's peak comes from because that's not on any of the other, sketches. That's not a feature that is anywhere at all. I mean, I guess the hoodlum has a little bit of one.
Yeah, it has a little bit of one. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's about it. I mean, they changed all that, but no, I mean, Lakich is Lakich is fine. I mean, the things that Lakich has going for him, I guess, are his coloring. I do like that he is ethnic Croatian, so he's got some kind of Balkan darkness, I guess, to him somehow, some olive skin tone. I mean, he's more Cooper looking than some of our suspects. I'll say that. I guess, like I said, I've always been a little bothered by the lack of aviation for him. But
well, let me tell you where he may have had some of this. Okay, I'm not saying he was a pilot or that type of stuff, but he was a military planner. Mm-hmm. Okay, and his last 3 years in the service, he was based in Germany. Okay, just like Larry Carr said, the Dan Cooper connection, probably somebody who was stationed in Europe. Okay. He was stationed in Germany. And I sort of read up about, what was going on in Germany at that time. And essentially, everyone was convinced World War III was imminent. All right. So as a military planner, I can see Joe needing to know, gee, if we have an incursion at point A, how do we get men, material, and, supplies to this point? And obviously one way is to bring it in by airplane and drop it. Okay, another way is to bring it into a nearby airport, and land and take it off, or use convoys, whatever it happens to be. But the aviation component is important because, that's the fastest way to get men and equipment, to an area where you need them. And so he has to know that, well, gee, perfect weather, you can just fly and go. But if it's low clouds, you got to fly an IFR, instrument flight plan. Okay. And, as an instrument pilot, you're up in the clouds, you're not seeing anything. And then you have to do an approach into an airport. And there's certain minimums depending on, the navigation aids that you can fly down to. Is it 600 feet above the airport, 1,200 feet? Just depends on the accuracy of those nav aids. Okay. And if they didn't have a lot of good nav aids back then with accuracy, those planes don't get in. So somebody like him may have to know, gee, when the enemy attacks over here, how are we going to get men and material, and under certain conditions, what's the scenario going to be? Good weather, it's option A. Bad weather, it's option B. So
Okay.
I think
if
he had an understanding, perhaps, of what was needed to move men and material.
All right. Well, this is not Joe Lakich centric question, but the is more from your book. How would he know? I mean, now that we know that there were no lights of Merwin Dam, that's actually a myth. How would you? No, that is a myth. I mean,
did you see the picture I gave you?
Sure. You're not seeing that through a triple cloud cover. You
Well,
think
no,
you're
you
seeing
don't see
that through
the
a
clouds. Of course not. No, but okay. If you listen to In Search Of,
I understand. They're
he
wrong.
says if Cooper could have seen the lights as he descended through the cloud layers, he would have been provided with an unmistakable landmark. He would have known exactly where he was.
Nonsense. I think I've disproven that. Like I said, I've talked to the guy. I'm going to have him at CooperCon this year, hopefully. Robert McClellan was the pilot of the little small airplane that flew around that night that In Search Of talked about and all this other stuff. He was a local pilot. His house, he had an airstrip on his house in his front yard.
Yeah.
It was actually the bullseye for the for Northwest's. The bullseye for Northwest's drop zone is actually literally on his front yard there in La Center. And he was a pilot, flew around. He was the one flying around that night. I asked him, I said, look, let me give you a scenario. I said, 1971, because he used to fly to work. He was actually an engineer, and he would fly to work from La Center to Vancouver every day to skip the traffic in his little Cessna. And because the airfield they landed on in Vancouver was right next to his office. So anyway, I asked him, I said, okay, so you were flying in that area a lot back then. I said, let me give you a scenario. You're 10,000 feet up, cloud covers at 5,000, 2,500, 1,500. Could you see the lights of Merwin Dam? He goes, what lights are you talking about? And I said, well, there's lights. They said in the Search Of episode, they said there were lights you could see. He goes, look, on a clear night, I can't see the dam. He said, the lights are so small. He said, on a clear night, I can't see where the dam is. I just have to look and see blackness to see where the lake is. So that kind of shook things up a lot when he said that. And his wife agreed. His wife was a pilot too. She goes, I wouldn't see anything. But what I did derive from that interview, which was interesting, was that I said, okay, well, let's just say you're on Victor 23, which was a low altitude airway, right? And he would have flown that a lot because that's what he would have. I mean, he's a Cessna pilot. I said, you're on V-23 heading from Seattle to Portland. When at 10,000 feet do the lights of Portland show up? And he said, roughly around like Woodland Battleground. You can kind of see it in the distance. I said in 71. He goes, yeah, in 71. He goes, now he's way further back because there's more metro. But in 71, he said probably there, through the clouds even. And so I speculate that maybe Cooper was looking for the lights of Portland to at least know what county he was in. But I feel like that's about as much as I could give Cooper credit for as knowing where he was, is that he knew Cooper may have known what county he was in, because I don't know how else he could have jumped with any precision to land near Merwin. I guess that would be my problem.
Well, like I say, he had an avionics device.
Okay, so
right.
Explain that.
Okay, let me see if I can find what slide it is. Maybe you can bring it up. It's DME.
This one here. I got it, Bill.
Okay.
Is that it?
DME stands for Distance Measuring Equipment. Mm-hmm. Okay. This device on the left, something like this was in the 727, because you can hear them report. They're saying, "Oh, we're 19 DME from Olympia."
Right.
Okay. So when this thing shows 19 miles, that gives you them a distance from the vortex. All right. They look over here to the right, and that's also a DME. And I'll just read what it says here. It says, the heart of the great new DME is a digital computer with unbelievable accuracy and performance. So the digital age was upon us. Okay. I mean, when in the 60s, I had a transistor radio, much smaller than the old ones with the tubes in it that, would sit in your kitchen or living room. Okay. So, and you can see this ad that I'm showing you is from the March 1971 edition of Flying Magazine.
And
So
what is this?
this was,
Is this a handheld DME or something?
no, it would go in your panel. But what I'm saying is, and especially makes sense now with Joe being in electronics for 10 years after he was, out of the service. He would have known about something like this, and I'd say he had the guts of that thing tucked away in his briefcase. Okay, not the whole thing. Doesn't have all the dials. Doesn't have all that. And I even say this in my book, that if he's as thorough as I think he was, he went up to the area of Merwin Dam and went up one of the hills nearby, and he turned this thing on and made sure it worked and got a distance so he knew where he was going to jump. Okay. He needed a clear sight back to the vortex, but he got up on a hill somewhere and did it. Now, the other thing I'm going to say as a pilot, and I've never flown over Merwin Dam, but I have flown a lot around here in New England. And during the day, you can use your navigation instruments. A lot of times you just want to fly around and enjoy the scenery and that type of stuff. And you can navigate from a lot of things you can see, like over to the west here, Mount Monadnock, 3,200 feet high. You take off. It's a pretty, noticeable reference point. All right. You fly over Lake Sunapee. Okay. You go out by the Connecticut River. You go to a little town and you can look down and see the roads and look on your map. So during the day, there's a lot of things you can navigate from. But at night, in areas where there's not a lot of population, you're flying over sometimes just forest and sometimes little villages. And okay, there's the dots from a few lights, but it's pretty dark. You've probably seen that from flying in, jetliners, right?
Well, I mean, I grew up with a Piper Warrior, so I grew up flying. So yeah.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
So at night, you can't see the lakes and the rivers so well.
No, it's just blackness. Sure.
Can't even see some of the mountains because they're not lit up. Okay. You can see the radio towers because they're well lit. Okay. And airports. If there's an airport that's in use and the lights are on, those shine up pretty well. But there's other things. I remember, flying one night and I'm seeing something off in the distance. I'm like, what is that light? What is that coming from? So it was maybe 20 miles away. And so I kept flying closer. Well, it was a football field and they were having a football game that night. Another thing, which you probably don't have in Mississippi, maybe you do, I don't know, but is ski area.
We don't.
So, you go by a mountain, be 50 miles away and you'd see this big mass of lights. And it's like, what is that? And you'd, fly in that direction. You get about halfway, so you're 25 miles away. And then you could realize, oh, that's a ski area, lit up for night skiing. So I think there probably would have been enough lights based on what I saw in that picture that Ariel being very, sparsely populated. I think there may be 400 people or so in Ariel in 1971. And you go north on V93, you're off into a place called Pigeon Springs. And if you even look down today on Google Earth, all you see is logging roads and timber harvests. I mean, it's, remote country. So I think, at the right altitude, those lights are going to be distinctive, maybe is the word to use.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. McClellan also told me, one of the questions I had for him was, if you were looking down, what city had what was the first city along B-23 south of, Chehalis and all those places? Like, what was the first city as you approached Portland that put off enough of a light footprint to be seen through light cloud cover? He said, Battleground or so. Back then. So, I mean, because La Center and Woodland really weren't big enough to do that. He thought Battleground, Orchards had a little bit, but And Cooper, doesn't want to look down and jump into blackness. I mean, that's,
because he
no.
can't look down anyway because they're right in the clouds.
Well, they were above the cloud. They were above the clouds. The clouds were at 5,000 feet where he jumped, so he wasn't actually in the clouds.
That's 5,000 overcast,
right.
But I think the cloud cover went right up beyond 10,000.
Not the National Weather Service said 5,000 scattered, 2,500 broken, and like 1,500 broken. So I mean, they were above it. They talk about flying through the soup, and they were in the soup a good bit, but they know that according to the 8 o'clock weather at the Portland airport, it was 5,000 feet cloud cover. So but looking down, but anyway, I just gave him the condition. I said looking down, he said,
that 5,000 doesn't tell you the top of the clouds. That only tells you the bottom of the clouds. 5,000 right? Overcast. Okay, that doesn't mean you go to 6,000 and you're out of it. Those clouds may go up to 12,000 feet.
Is that right? Well, let me see what the let me pull this up for you. But Bill, maybe you've not seen this, but this is the weather service there. Portland, Oregon, 5,000 feet overcast there for Portland, Oregon. So 1,500 scattered, 2,700 broken, 5,000 feet overcast. So you're saying that the overcast would extend higher?
You don't know where the top of the overcast is. All you know is that at the bottom of it's at 5,000 feet. Okay.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So 5,000, people who fly what they call visual flight rules could fly in those conditions because, they have enough clearance above them, to fly. They can't go above 5,000.
If Cooper's in the soup when he jumps, then he's really not seeing a damn thing. So maybe he's
crazy.
Just.
It's crazy.
I assume he could have seen something. I would hope so. All I know is that the copycats, he's the only one who doesn't really give them directions, which is weird. The other ones gave their pilots exact degrees to fly even. Now McNally got screwed up because they were going faster than he told them to. Because he told them to fly at 200 miles an hour, and they said Max a doofus, and they cranked it up to 350, I think. And he was looking down, thinking, he was like, I just don't want to land in the Great Lakes because I know we're getting near there, so I better jump out before we get over the Great Lakes. And he looked down and saw some street lights it was a clear night, and that's when he jumped. Now, Hetty, of course, was a champion skydiver, right? And I'm really hoping to have him come this year. Because he's the only other copycat who's still alive. And Hetty gave his pilots. He lives in Nevada. He's an accountant.
Nevada, okay.
Nevada, yeah. He actually got his accounting degree. Huh?
Yeah, he's not close to Vancouver, but he's not.
No, he's not crazy far.
Halfway across the country.
No, and Hetty came to the Cooper Symposium in 2013, so he's not Cooper Vortex averse. He's been part of it before. But he gave his pilots exact degrees, but they screwed him because they decided to be 1 degree off. And so when he jumped, that's why he didn't land on top of his car, which he probably would have if they hadn't done that. He was such a good skydiver, and he had planned it out so well, but he landed on the wrong side of a lake. I think maybe even Lake Tahoe, and he had to walk around the entire lake all night. Wow. And by the time he got around to his car, they were staking his car out. But otherwise, he probably would have got away with it. Honestly, he wore a bag over his head, didn't buy a ticket, he just ran onto a plane that was deboarding. Anyway, so yeah, it's a lot of folks are like Jay's saying that Cooper may have taken the flight a few times with a map to time his jump and maybe things like that. No need for lights. I don't know. He was taking a real gamble, not even telling them what flight path to fly on. Right?
Well, I had one FBI document that says they agreed on the flight path. I can't,
Yeah, and that's just not because we've got the the radio transcripts.
Slide 2B, you can look at it.
Well, we have them talking to. Well, we have the thing is we have the radio transcripts between, NWA flight ops, and they're like, well, which route are we going to take? And Soderland figured that V-23 all the way down to Sacramento was safest because you could fly low and not run into a mountain, right? So they just chose V-23. They could have chosen something else. Obviously Radacek wanted a more westerly route that went over the ocean to have him just jump out of the ocean, which, if Cooper couldn't see anything when he jumped, he could have landed in the damn ocean for sure. But it is interesting that so the Air Force, they're where they think Cooper jumped. So the FBI went with Northwest Airlines' drop zone, which interestingly enough was designed. Well, the parachute descent was by Jim Hancock, who was Alice Hancock's husband. Interestingly, he was a flight engineer for Northwest and he was a big time skydiver. And apparently Alice had gone skydiving before the hijacking. So we have a stewardess on the flight who actually had gone, and there were no tandem jumps back then. So she jumped out of a plane with a parachute, which is pretty brave. But so Alice had done that. And, but Jim Hancock is who designed the flight, is who designed the map where it comes right on top of Robert McClellan's front yard, which is interesting. And anyway, the Army, the Captain Spangler, who designed the flight path map, he was asked to do a drop because his job, Spangler, was a cargo drop specialist in Vietnam. That was his occupation, was dropping supplies out of parachutes and knowing where they're going to go. So he's who better to do that. And he actually told Chris Cunningham last year when he called him. We finally found Spangler. He nice guy. He living in Virginia or somewhere now. But he was saying that his map put Cooper right into Lake Merwin. He's like, I think he landed right in the lake. But of course, we know now that can't be because the money find, right?
Well, the other thing, because I guess there's some question whether the parachute was an NB6 or an NB8.
And it makes no difference, really.
But it does, yeah.
I mean, they're both good parachutes for the job. I mean, that's an NB6 right there. So,
but I found some instructions for that parachute. Okay, and you can alter the glide path by about 30 degrees. Okay, by crossing some of the rises.
Sure.
So you have an opportunity. I mean, you can't do like a maneuverable parachute today. What do they call it? Well,
they're not steerable. They don't have the
Yeah. But the canopy style, I guess, whatever you call it, that's steerable, like you're saying. You couldn't do that type of maneuverability, but you had the option. Like if you're at 5,000 feet and you can see that you're drifting right towards Lake Merwin, you have the ability to actually adjust that glide slope a little bit. I think it lets air off on one side, so it tends to steer in that direction. So if Cooper saw he was headed for Lake Merwin, he knew how to do that. He could have at least got himself to the shoreline.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you do actually. I will say that you do get some props from me. For your book cover, because your book cover actually, let me try to show people this. There's an epidemic in the Cooper books for where is what's it called? What's the Blevins book called? Somebody help me out.
Blast. Something
Into the Blast. Yes, there we go.
Into the Blast.
Like if you look at, we have an epidemic of Cooper books where if you look at these parachutes, okay, on the book covers, and like, by God, now my book cover does not have a parachute on it. So, but
they're using the newer style parachutes.
Always do. They always do. I don't think yours does. And like, no. Yeah. So look at that new parachute.
Yeah.
New parachute there.
Yeah.
What else we got? Is there another one? Let's see. New parachute.
Yeah.
Okay. And yours actually has the round canopy. Hooray. Which is rare. Like I said, not many Cooper books actually have that. I know.
Thank you.
I mean, seriously, that would drive me insane. Oh, even here's another one. Of all the books, let's see. I think even when this bugs me too. Here's one. Let me pull it up here. The copycat book that I was going to write, but John Wigger instead wrote it. That's the McNally book, another friggin' rectangular parachute there. So, but you actually get it right though. So congrats to you for getting a round canopy. I know that I think the only other one, well, not the only other one, but I know Drew's cover, Drew Beeson, Paratrooper of Fortune, has a circular canopy at least. But so yeah, props for that, Bill. I do appreciate your cover, at least if we're gonna have a good cover. Because you would have lost considerable points if you had a rectangular canopy on there, because it just doesn't work with a rectangular canopy. But anyway, so that's good. So basically, okay, well, we're at an hour and a half now, so I think we're gonna wrap it up here. So okay. Basically, Bill, I'm glad to have you on. And Lakich did. Let me see. Lakich scored. Lakich did make our. If I go look at our bracket from last year. Let me find. Okay. Well, yes. Actually, if nothing else, let me find our final results of our bracket. Here we go. The final bracket challenge. Let me pull this up for everybody for our little bracket here. We did our March Madness because it is March. I'll wait another year to do it again, but our little bracket here. Come on, where is it? Let's see. Lakich, we did win the first round. Yeah, there we go. He ran into a buzzsaw there, bottom left. Lakich beat the hell out of Rekka, as he should. Then he got beat up pretty bad by Gossett, which is a bad draw. It's a bad draw in the bracket to go up against Gossett. Gossett's a fan favorite. Right. But Lakich at least was admirable enough to knock out. I mean, Lakich was our 13th highest rated suspect, so that's something, considering there's a lot of them out there. Let's see what else. Lakich ended up in the Hoodlum Regional, which is your sketch for Lakich. So
the Hoodlum Region. I see. Yeah. So this is like you say, March Madness. I see.
Yeah, we did a March Madness bracket, so we'll have to do one again. But anyway, he did do well. He did at least beat Rekka, which, I mean, that's something.
Is it?
Oh yeah, I know. I was gonna say, is it really? I think you could beat. I think you or I could beat Rekka, honestly, because he's about the worst one out there, to be honest. Anyway, all right. Well, thank you to Bill. Good night, everybody, and thank you to Bill for joining me, buddy. And hopefully we'll see you again soon at CooperCon. Another time. We're gonna be back in Vancouver this year, people. So back in the great area, and Vancouver's a good place for it too, because it's more. Seattle is Coopery, but Portland, we get to have Tina Bar, and we get to have Battleground and Ariel and Merwin, and that's more Coopery country for me, I think.
What's the dates for DB CooperCon this year?
It's middle of November, and it's gonna be back at the Kiggins Theater, which is cozy and nice, and the Museum of Flight was great, but that
doesn't have the personal touch so much.
It doesn't. It is not cozy. It's not cozy for sure. But anyway, all right, folks. Well, good night and good luck. And thanks, Bill.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.